It's time for America Outdoors Radio, the show that covers the outdoor scene across the U.S. of A. and the entire continent. Fishing, hunting, conservation, outdoor recreation, and great destinations. We cover it all every week. It's your country, your outdoors. Let's explore it together with your host, John Kruse.
Welcome to the show. It's a great weekend to go fishing or take somebody who hasn't been fishing in a while fishing, because it's a free fishing weekend in a number of states around the country. That includes my home state of Washington State, where you can fish or crab or clam with no license required. And in Florida, you can go freshwater fishing this weekend too. Other states offering free fishing this weekend include Alabama, Arkansas, Washington, D.C., Iowa, Louisiana, Missouri, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, and several states are also offering Saturday. If you're a Saturday listener, June 8th is a free fishing day that includes Utah, Nevada, Idaho, and Georgia. So here's another little trick. You can go fishing in a lot of these states for free, even as a non-resident, and that really saves you some money. So either take somebody fishing who hasn't been fishing for a while, get them hooked on the sport again, or maybe go to a neighboring state and try out some waters there without paying those extra fees. No matter what reason you choose, it's a great excuse to go fishing this weekend. This week on the show, we've got some great guests for you. One of them is Mike Whitlow. He's the Western representative for Anglers Inn International. He's got a Lake El Salto fishing report for you from Mexico, not far from Mazatlan. And I'll tell you what, the fishing's been very, very good. And he's got openings for a July trip. If you want to go fishing with him, I'd highly recommend it, especially based on how good the fishing is and how big those largemouth bass are down there. Speaking of fishing trips, we've got one opening left on the Sportsman's Cove Lodge fishing trip that I'm going to be on with my daughter Faith, and I'd love it if one of our listeners signed up to go fishing with us. Don't know if we have room on the boat, but there's only 30 guests at the lodge, so we'll definitely get to spend some quality time, either before or after the fishing day, and we can swap some fishing stories, maybe over a drink or maybe over dinner or breakfast. I'll tell you more about this opportunity later in the show, but you can get a head start by going to alaskasbestlodge.com. That's the website for Sportsman's Cove Lodge, and let them know you want to fish the 6th or the 9th. There's $1,000 off per person if you do. Again, there's only one opening, though, so this is just for one individual. That's all we've got left on this trip. As for our other guests, well, we've got Richard Sims, the editor of Crappie Now. He'll be joining us to talk about a media camp that they held down at Barnett Reservoir in Mississippi. As you might imagine, crappie fishing was first and foremost on the mind for Richard, and he'll tell you how the crappie fishing is down there. And I'll give you a preview. Just like the bass fishing at Lake El Salto in Mexico, the crappie fishing at Barnett Reservoir in Mississippi, really, really good. And our other guest, that would be David Moskowitz. He's a very talented photographer who collaborated with a writer to produce a beautiful coffee table book called Big River, and it's all about the Columbia River that flows from Canada into the Pacific Ocean bordering Oregon and Washington. It's one of the biggest rivers in America, and the photos here and the narrative really captures not just the river itself, but the natural history of the river, the wildlife and the fish, and the people who fight for the river and benefit from the river too. I think you're going to really enjoy this conversation with David Moskowitz about the Big River, also known as the Columbia River. Before we talk to our guests, though, we've got some outdoors news to share with you. We start things off at Yellowstone National Park, where, once again, people are getting way too close to big animals. That includes an 83-year-old woman from South Carolina who was gored by a bison at Yellowstone Lake in Wyoming. According to news reports, the bison was, quote-unquote, defending its space. The woman was just a few feet away from the bison, and the bison used its horns to gore the woman, lifting her off the ground about a foot. Emergency responders took the woman to a nearby clinic, and then she was taken by helicopter to a hospital in Idaho Falls, Idaho. This happened last Saturday, and as of press time, we don't have any condition about the woman except that she sustained serious injuries. Remember, you should stay 25 yards away from bison and, quite frankly, give all the wildlife in Yellowstone and other national parks ample space. These events happen every single year. People trying to take selfies or getting way too close to elk and bison and bear and moose, and bad things happen, and it's all preventable. In other news, this time related to waterfowl, we learned that 60 years of data compiled by the U.S. Geological Survey, Ducks Unlimited, and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, have found that migration patterns are changing for certain breeds of ducks in the Midwest. Using 60 years of band recovery data from the Central and Mississippi flyways, it's been determined that blue-winged teal winter distributions shifted westward and southwards, and mallard and northern pintail distributions shifted eastward and northwards by 60 to several hundred miles. Why this is happening is not answered in the study. That will probably be the subject of a follow-up study. And now it's time for one of my favorite segments that we get to air on the show.
Record fish, anyone?
From USA Today, we learn a fisherman caught a flathead catfish weighing a whopping 95 pounds. It was caught at Pine Creek Reservoir that's located in McCurtain County, which sits along Oklahoma's borders with Texas and Arkansas. The person that caught the fish was Bradley Courtwright, an angler from Oklahoma, who caught the monster catfish on a trot line. The catch is not a state record, but it certainly is a lake record, and the picture of it has been making the rounds on social media, and for good reason. The fish was cleaned and provided over 40 pounds of meat to a lot of catfish lovers. If you want to see the picture yourself, you can probably find it at the Oklahoma Department of Wildlife Conservation Facebook page. They've got a post there all about it. And as for you, Mr. Courtwright, way to go. That is one heck of a catfish.
Congratulations on your new record.
Next, a nightmare story for a big bass tournament angler. From LakeExpo.com, we learn that Chris Larkins, who was fishing the Big Bass Bash at the Lake of the Ozarks, caught and released a $100,000 fish not once, but twice, and still wasn't able to cash in a paycheck. Here's what happened. Larkins was fishing the 2-day tournament, and on the first day, saw this 7.98-pound bass hanging out near the bank. Now, this is on Saturday, April 20th. The bass was on a gravel spawning bed, and Larkins decided he was going to sit on that spot all weekend long if he had to until he caught that fish. He was fishing with his 21-year-old son and worked a variety of lures past the fish for a couple hours, then finally got a bite. He reeled in the lunker. His son netted it, but before the celebration could begin, his son said, "Dad, it's outside the mouth." That's right. Tournament rules specify a fish must be hooked inside of the mouth for it to be a legal catch. Snagging a fish anywhere outside of the mouth disqualifies you. So Larkins did the right thing, and he let the fish go. But before he did, he weighed it and determined it was a 7.98-pound fish on his scale, which, by the way, would have been the winning fish. So Larkins lets the fish go. The bass goes back to its spawning bed, and Larkins starts casting again. An hour and a half later, Larkins caught the fish again, and they got it to the boat again. But once again, it was foul hooked, so he returned the fish to the water a second time. By now, the tournament was ending for the day, but Larkins decided to return first thing Sunday morning and spend all day trying to catch that fish again. Unfortunately for him, he never got a chance. Larkins said a couple of guys had been standing on a nearby dock watching him reel in the monster. And they asked Larkins why he threw the fish back after he caught it. He explained his reason, trying to do the right thing, and also explained to the men, "That's a $100,000 fish. Please let me try to catch it the following day." Larkins said, "I shook that guy's hand on his dock, and he assured me that he would not mess with the fish nor tell anybody that was there." However, later that night, scrolling Facebook, Larkins' heart sank into his stomach. A photo posted to a local Facebook group showed one of the two men holding up that very bass with the caption, "We caught this 7.9-pound largemouth bass in about 2 feet of water by our dock today." The next morning, Larkins and his son made a beeline back to the spot, hoping against hope the fish might still be there, thinking the guys had thrown the big bass back. When he got there, he found one of the men walking down to the dock. Larkins told the man he'd seen the photo from the night before, and that's when he found out that the men kept the fish and filleted it. Larkins admitted he blew a gasket. "It wasn't pleasant," he said, "I will tell you that." Talk about a heartbreaking story. And Larkins says despite the way things turned out, he doesn't regret doing the right thing and throwing the fish back when he had foul hooked it. As for the two men on the dock, yeah, they had a legal right to catch the fish, but they shouldn't have promised they were going to leave it alone just to go ahead and start fishing for it as soon as Larkins left on the first day. To those two guys, whoever you are, you're jerks. And as for Mr. Larkins, I hope karma comes around and grants you a big tournament when you certainly deserve it after this.
Ready to step up to a quality-built rifle or shotgun that's a true classic? Check out Henry Repeating Arms, American-made. There's over 200 models to choose from in a variety of finishes and calibers for hunters and target shooters. Many of these are lever-action models with a look right out of the Old West. Don't be deceived, though. Henry Repeating Arms are modern, rugged, accurate, reliable, and have a lifetime guarantee. Find out more and order a free catalog today at henryusa.com. That's henryusa.com.
We love our children. We protect them. We guide them. We prepare them for life in the world. With all that we do from deep in our hearts, we cannot control all things. Life-threatening illnesses and disabilities affect far too many of our children each year. While we cannot change the circumstances, we can make dreams come true. Dreams to provide hope, to provide spiritual healing and strength, to provide moments of happiness and relief in the darkest of times. We can give a glimmer of light and hope in a time of darkness and despair. Join huntofalifetime.org to help make dreams come true, to provide hope for children with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Hunt of a Lifetime is a nonprofit organization fulfilling dreams for hunting and fishing trips to youth 21 and under with life-threatening illnesses and disabilities. Visit huntofalifetime.org to learn how you can make a difference. That's huntofalifetime.org.
Campers, adventure seekers, hunters, and foodies. No matter the lifestyle, we can all agree on one thing. Great food and great people are worth remembering. At Camp Chef, we don't just make grills. We create each product knowing that a warm meal is always better when it's shared with those we love. Learn more about Camp Chef grills, smokers, and portable cooking equipment at campchef.com. That's campchef.com for a better way to cook outdoors.
Welcome back to America Outdoors Radio. I'm John Kruse. We've got Richard Sims on the line again. He's the editor of Crappie Now. And I'll tell you what, if you go to crappienow.com, you're going to see the lead article is about the Crappie Now Media Camp that was hosted at Barnett Reservoir near Ridgeland, Mississippi. And man, oh man, they caught a whole bunch of crappie down there. Richard, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thank you, John. I appreciate you having me.
So I've been to what I call fish camp, which is something very similar before, where a promoter named Ed Iman would go ahead and get manufacturers together and retailers together like Cabela's and Lamaglass Rods and Columbia Sportswear and Camp Chef and other sponsors. And then he would invite some guides and tournament anglers and then media members, and we'd all get together for several days of camping in the Columbia River Gorge, and we'd go fishing every day. But the main thing that was going on was the networking that was happening during the fishing trips and after the fishing trips, and it was a win-win for everybody. And this is kind of similar, but it was happening in Mississippi, right?
Absolutely. It's the exact same thing. You know, sponsored by the publisher of Crappie Now, who teamed up with the tourism folks in Ridgeland, Mississippi, to come down to Ross Barnett Reservoir. They're basically in the city limits of Ridgeland, more or less. And just like you described, a ton of great sponsors, Crappie Magnet, Power Pole, Garmin, Driftmaster, you know, the list goes on and on of the sponsors who were involved. And about a half dozen different writers are invited to come down and fish on Ross Barnett Reservoir and learn all about it, and of course generate content for our magazine and our social media outlets. And it's one of those deals that's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about Ross Barnett Reservoir? It's a body of water I'm completely unfamiliar with, and I think a lot of our listeners are too, because it's overshadowed by some nearby lakes that are much more popular with crappie anglers.
You've got that. You nailed it. You know, there's some of the best, most well-known crappie fishing lakes in the country, if not the world, are in northern Mississippi. Grenada, Sardis, Enid, those lakes, they just get an incredible amount of publicity. And one of the young ladies I was speaking to with Ridgeland Tourism Group, you know, she said herself, she says, we're kind of a well-kept secret. Barnett Reservoir is about an hour south of all those lakes I just named. So you're kind of in the same general territory organization. In spite of what I experienced, incredible crappie fishing. And there's one big difference on Barnett Reservoir. The lakes to the north produce a lot of big crappie. Their growth rates are a lot faster, so they have stricter size limit and creel regulations. But on Barnett Reservoir, it's the same statewide limit as most of Mississippi. There are no size limits on Barnett. You can keep any size crappie you want to, and you're allowed 30 crappie per day per angler. But even though there's no size limit, there was no shortage of 10, 12, 14, 15-inch crappie. We caught a lot of good crappie. If you go to Crappie Now and you read the article that you were reading, apparently, you'll see that we caught some great fish, and we caught a lot of them.
And it's not just crappie in that lake either. I saw that you got a picture of our mutual friend Ron Stallings from TTI Blakemore, who was holding a catfish there. So you weren't just catching crappie, were you?
No, and actually, there were some of the guides who were guiding specifically for catfish. Keith Sutton, our counterpart, who is the editor for Catfish Now, was catfishing mostly and gathering content for Catfish Now. But it so happened the picture you're talking about, we were actually crappie fishing when we caught that flathead. And, like most anglers do, that a lot of times when you're crappie fishing, you get some bycatch, and that 7 or 8 pound flathead that Ron caught was a lot of fun on a crappie rod. So, it's a very productive lake for multiple species.
Tell our listeners a little bit about Ridgeland, Mississippi. Also unfamiliar with it, but it sounds like they were great hosts for this event.
They were. It was super. We went to some great restaurants. There was one in particular that we all remembered and enjoyed a whole lot. It's called Cock on the Walk. And, it was some great down-home Southern food. It was fantastic. The tourism lady told me there's 150 different restaurants, but she was real adamant about pointing out that they're not your typical chain restaurants.
Right.
That they're one-of-a-kind restaurants with some top-notch chefs, parks, a lot of hiking and biking opportunities. And it's just right outside Jackson, Mississippi, the capital of the state. Ridgeland's almost a suburb of Jackson. So you've got Jackson, Mississippi, not very far away if you want to get into a bigger city. But, yeah, it was a really cool. I've been to the other lakes to the north, Grenada, Sardis, made a trip there back in April. But this was my first trip on Barnett, and I'll definitely want to go back.
Well, I think you are probably encouraging some of our listeners to go there too. So, folks, if you're interested in going, check out Barnett Reservoir in northeast Mississippi and check out Ridgeland, Mississippi too. Their tourism bureau, do you have the website by chance?
Their website, the tourism, is www.exploreridgeland.com. I need to mention one particular guide I fished with, that's his home lake, and his name's Brad Chappell. He's referenced in the Crappie Now article. There's pictures or even a video in there I shot with Brad. And I tell you what, that guy, he knows that lake better than I know my backyard. I think he told me he had 3,000 waypoints on his electronics, and he knows exactly which ones hold fish and which ones don't for the right time of year. But you better plan in advance because Brad stays booked up way in advance. But, visit CrappieNow.com and read that article you're talking about. It's called Ridgeland, Mississippi, Barnett Reservoir, Host Crappie Now Media Camp. And there's a lot of good information and got a lot of good web links there.
All right. Again, CrappieNow.com is the website to go to. Check out the article about this media camp. And again, if you want to plan a trip to Barnett Reservoir and go fishing with Brad Chappell, just go to bradchappellguideservice.com and check out exploreridgeland.com and plan a stay in Ridgeland, Mississippi, a crappie fishing stay that's going to be a whole bunch of fun. Richard, thanks so much for sharing this with us today on America Outdoors Radio.
Well, John, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share. It's greatly appreciated.
Well, now that you've got some great advice about catching crappie, hopefully you can go out there and catch a whole mess of them. And when you do, you know you're going to have to clean them. And the job gets a lot easier if you have a sharp fillet knife. And how do you sharpen it? Well, with a knife sharpener from WorkSharp. You can either use an electric model. They've got a whole line of kitchen knife sharpeners. I've got one on my counter that I use all the time on my cutlery, including my fillet knife. And I've got a guided field sharpener that I use when I'm out in the field. So if you're at the fish cleaning station or just on the bank of the river or the lake, that works just fine too. Either way, WorkSharp makes your life easier on the water and when you get off the water and need to clean those fish. So look for electric and manual knife sharpeners from WorkSharp at their website at worksharptools.com or at quality sporting goods stores all over the United States. The website again, worksharptools.com. I'm heading to Sportsman's Cove Lodge with my daughter Faith. We're going to be fishing there from July 6th through the 9th, and guess what? They've got space available, and they are offering $1,000 off per person. So here's your opportunity to come fishing with me. I would love to fish with you for lingcod, for salmon, for halibut, true cod, and more. Again, the dates are July 6th through the 9th. It's $1,000 off. Go to alaskasbestlodge.com and sign up for a trip to Sportsman's Cove Lodge.
Are you looking to reel in the marketing opportunity of a lifetime? Then set the hook because we've got it right here for you. America Outdoors Radio has sponsorships available, and we offer affordable platforms to reach thousands of listeners interested in fishing, hunting, and the outdoors. Find out more by contacting John Kruse through his website at AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com. That's AmericaOutdoorsRadio.com. Hurry, though. If you wait too long, the big opportunity might get away.
You're back in with America Outdoors Radio. I'm John Kruse. We got my old friend Michael Whitlow on the line. He's the Western representative for Anglers Inn International, and he's been down at Anglers Inn at Lake El Salto in Mexico. And man, oh man, the fishing's been good. Mike, great to have you back in the air.
Great to be back, John. Looking forward to telling you all about it.
You know, you had me down 2 or 3 years ago and had a great time. Caught my personal best. Actually caught several personal best fish. But, you know, the fishing, it wasn't red hot. We were averaging about 20 fish a day. I understand, though, that your recent trips, it's been en fuego, also known as on fire. Tell our listeners about the fishing there.
Well, let me tell you, John, about 3 years ago, we had 3 hurricanes in the fall, and that blew the water out. The water was over the spillway for several weeks, and that pushes the fish real deep down in the treetops. So the next year, fishing was a little tough. I think that's the year you went with us, even though you caught some big, high-quality fish, fat. The next year, we had a biomass explosion, tilapia, I'd swear by the millions, and the shad exploded. That next year, the fishing was okay. This year, it is off the charts. El Salto is back. It's gone through a little cycle. And let me tell you, the 5, 6, 7s, 8s, and 9s, and there's still a lot of double digits in there. We're catching quite a few. But to go down there, had a group in May 1st to the 6th. We had 24 of us. I think we had about 10 couples, and almost everybody in the group caught their personal best. A gentleman from Idaho, been with me for a second time, caught 110 fish. Yeah, that's right, 110 fish in one day by himself on swim baits. Had 37 fish between 7 and 9.5 pounds. El Salto is on fire, and it is back with a fury.
Oh, my goodness. Now, Lake El Salto, folks, it's located in Mexico, about an hour and a half away from Mazatlan. And it's a really unique fishery because this is not an old lake. It's actually a fairly new reservoir, about 30, 35 years old now?
Yeah, it's over 30 years old now, yes.
And it's planted with these Florida strain largemouth bass that get really, really big. So there's a bunch of bass swimming in there that are 10 pounds and better, aren't there?
Oh, there's lots of them. And, my boss, Billy Chapman Jr., who owns Anglers Inn International, and I'm so blessed to work for him, he's the one that introduced Florida strain largemouth to these Mexican lakes over 30 years ago. He put them in El Salto. He had them put tilapia in there. And that mix, those tilapia are nutrient-rich. It makes the bass grow big. And it's an irrigation reservoir. So the water goes up in the fall, and it comes down, during the irrigation season. Right now, it's about 60 feet down. In the fall, when it starts raining, all that grass grows up. The tilapia feed on that. The bass feed on it. Right now, there's so many 5 to 9 pound fish in that lake. It's incredible. All the reports from all of our customers that are coming down fishing, they're all catching big fish and lots of them.
Well, let's talk about a typical trip to Lake El Salto. What does that look like?
Well, a standard trip is 4 nights, 3+ days of fishing. Most of the trips that I host, I usually do 5 nights, 4.5, because that extra day is 3.5 days just ain't enough down there. 4.5 days does it just about right. So you can come down with me. The cost is $26.20 for a 5-night, 4+ day trip with us. And what that gets you is you just got to bring some fishing reels and you got to bring some tackle. And we'll send you a suggested tackle list depending upon the season you're there. Other than that, you get your airfare. From there on, we take care of it. We'll pick you up at the airport in private vans, whisk you up to the lodge, lodging on the lake, 2 to a room, 2 to your own 18-foot aluminum bass boat with your own guide, all meals, drinks, open bar, alcohol included. And you know what, John? They even do our laundry for us every day, so you don't have to pack real heavy. So, we take care of everything, feed you great meals. You do not go hungry. And then you get out and you catch a lot of fish.
You do indeed. And folks, I got to tell you, the customer service is fantastic at Anglers Inn International at Lake El Salto. The accommodations are very comfortable, and you are going to fish a lot and catch a lot of fish. You're going to have a great time. And I've really got to recommend the hosted trips over the non-hosted trips, because what Mike offers in terms of like tackle recommendations and insider knowledge, it's night and day than trying to do this alone. And, great example, when I was down there was a group coming in that was non-hosted, and they had no idea what kind of tackle to bring. And so I was literally giving the guy some of my Berkeley War Pigs because they were just the lure to use. And he had no idea that was something that was going to work. And so not only that, do you get the insider knowledge and the tackle recommendations, but you also have the opportunity to spend some extra time in Mazatlan at a great resort, El Cid. Tell our listeners about this option.
So at the end of your fishing trip, or even sometimes on the front end, whether you're bringing the wives or girlfriends, or if it's just the guys, on that very last day, you can fish 2 or 3 hours in the morning, and we can whisk you off to the airport, get you to the airport on time to fly home, probably get back to the States at your destination at midnight or later, depending upon where you live. But the alternate to that is you'll fish till 11 like a regular day, come in and have lunch, you pack, we'll whisk you off to Mazatlan and stay the night at a beautiful resort right on the beach. I can handle that for you. Then you can stay 1, 2, 3 nights. I can customize it however you want. But at least on that last day, you can fish till 11, have lunch, go to Mazatlan, relax, have a nice dinner, sleep in a little bit, get back to the airport. You're rested for that long journey home. So, we can help you with that too.
And I would highly recommend it. El Cid is definitely a 5-star, all-inclusive resort. All sorts of pool areas. They got a private beach right in the marina. A great place to stay in Mazatlan.
Yes, it is.
I guess we need to talk about one other thing. Do you have any more trips going on this year, and do you have any openings?
I do. I've got some of the best fishing in the summertime, July 1st to the 6th. You can actually meet up and go with me, and July 6th to the 11th. I've still got a few spots in those groups. The summertime fishing, it even gets better. The lake's probably going to be down a few more feet. These fish are stacked up. They're in big schools. They're chasing the shad and tilapia on the surface. The topwater bite, phenomenal. It's not uncommon to catch 30, 40 fish in the mornings on topwaters. And I'm talking some big fish. The spinnerbait bite, the swim bait, the crankbait bite, it's all a reaction bite. Of course, you got to throw the plastics in during the middle of the day, but I'm telling you, the summertime bite can be off the charts. 100+ fish days is not uncommon.
Well, I'll tell you what, folks, there's nothing better than a topwater bite from a big bass. And my personal best, which is an 8+ pounder, was caught at Lake El Salto on a topwater popper. So consider heading on down there for these July trips. Again, the price is right. You're going to have a great host. It's going to guide you through your experience, and you're going to have a wonderful time. If folks want to book a trip with you in July, how do they do it, Mike?
Well, you can call our 1-800-GOT-A-FISH number and ask for Michael Whitlow, and they'll get you in touch with me, and we'll get you set up. Or you can call me on my direct personal phone. I'll take good care of you, 509-378-2814. Again, 509-378-2814. Or you can contact me at mike.whitlow@anglersinn.com. Looking forward to having you guys join me. And like I said, this is a trip of a lifetime. The problem is once you go once, you're going to want to do it again.
So very true. The email again is mike.whitlow, that's WHITLOW, @anglersinn.com. Can't remember that, or you don't have a pen, just go to anglersinn.com. Call the 1-800 line. Tell them you want to book a trip with Mike Whitlow, and they will hook you up. You're going to have a great time. And July is coming up really quick. Great opportunity to go fishing, catch some big, big bass in Mexico, and get pampered while you're at it. Mike, thanks so much for sharing this with us today on America Outdoors Radio.
Well, you bet. It's good to be with you and good to talk to you and catch up again, John.
Amen. In other news, got to give it up for our friends at Henry Repeating Arms. They've come up with something very unique. It's the Garden Gun Smoothbore 22 caliber lever action rifle. Now, the Henry Garden Gun is one that you use if you are trying to deal with mice or maybe snakes on your property. And obviously, if you live in the city, this isn't going to work out for you. But if you live in the country and want to get rid of some of these pests, this is the perfect rifle for you. It actually uses a 22 caliber long-range shot shell. And because it's a smooth bore and doesn't have rifling, it distributes the projectiles in a really tight pattern. Throw in the fact it's got a 15-round capacity, and there's plenty of pest control to go around. It's like all of the firearms from Henry Repeating Arms. It's made in the USA. It comes with a lifetime satisfaction guarantee. So check it out. It's at henryusa.com. That's henryusa.com. And don't forget to ask for your free decals and catalog while you're there.
Explore the Dalles, the hub where discovery and history come together. Whether the Northwest is your home or you're on an adventure, the Dalles welcomes you. Just 80 miles east of Portland is the perfect year-round escape with a community that cares about you. 300 days of sun, breathtaking outdoor recreation, and a downtown full of the unexpected. Oh, and the rich history that began before the Oregon Trail. Start planning at explorethedalles.com.
I'm heading to Sportsman's Cove Lodge with my daughter Faith. We're going to be fishing there from July 6th through the 9th, and guess what? They've got space available, and they are offering $1,000 off per person. So here's your opportunity to come fishing with me. I would love to fish with you for lingcod, for salmon, for halibut, true cod, and more. Again, the dates are July 6th through the 9th. It's $1,000 off. Go to alaskasbestlodge.com and sign up for a trip to Sportsman's Cove Lodge.
When you think of Work Sharp knife and tool sharpeners, you probably think of sharpeners for the shop or the field, but Work Sharp has a whole lineup of sharpeners for the kitchen, too. We're talking about everything from easy-to-use manual and electric knife sharpeners to ceramic honing rods, whetstones, and the new rolling knife sharpener, an innovative manual sharpener that will do wonders for your cutlery. Make sure there's never a dull moment in your kitchen. Check out the entire product line and order today at WorkSharpTools.com. That's WorkSharpTools.com. This is the time of year to get out and cook out. So make your next meal sizzle with Camp Chef, the brand known for quality outdoor cooking. From camp stoves to cast iron, from smokers to grills, Camp Chef will change the way you cook outdoors. To eat like a king on your next adventure, go to campchef.com or visit your local sporting goods store and get cooking. Whether you're serving breakfast in the backcountry or barbecue on the back patio, savor the simplicity with Camp Chef. Camp Chef, the way to cook outdoors.
You know, you see a huge group of people and maybe they're in line to do something and they seem happy about it. You have to wonder, okay, what am I missing? What's going on here? What are these people excited about? Well, in this case, it's thousands of people and they're joining MediShare. Why? Well, MediShare is a much more affordable alternative to health insurance. It's reliable, too. It's a well-run community of Christians. They've been sharing each other's medical expenses for more than 30 years. And if you switch, you'll likely save hundreds of dollars a month. Most members wind up paying about half what they used to. And you know what? They find they like it better. MediShare's member satisfaction rate is 98%. That's way better than health insurance, as you might imagine. You don't have to pay for things you don't believe in. You get telehealth 24/7, huge freedom in choosing your doctors. At least check into it. This may be one of those things where you're like, why didn't I do this a long time ago? Why not start saving now? Call 855-SHARE-40. That's 855-SHARE-40. 855-SHARE-40.
You're back in with America Outdoors Radio. I'm John Kruse. Our next stop is a place I call home. It's the Pacific Northwest, and it's defined in a large part by the Columbia River. And a couple of people have come out with a beautiful coffee table book called Big River. It's all about the Columbia River, and it's all about the resilience and renewal in the Columbia Basin, not just the Columbia River, but its tributaries too. With us here is one of the people that contributed to it, David Moskowitz, who has got some fantastic photography that fills up this book. David, welcome to the show.
It's good to be with you.
Let's tell folks a little bit about the Columbia River. We've got listeners back east that know very little about it.
Sure. Well, the Columbia River is one of the largest river systems in North America, and its watershed is the size of the country of France, and it occupies part of Washington State, Oregon, Nevada, Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, and a big chunk of the province of British Columbia as well.
Well, most folks think of the Columbia as just flowing from British Columbia into the Pacific Ocean along the borders of Oregon and Washington. But you're right, the tributaries, the watershed itself covers a lot more ground. And the Columbia got its name from Captain Cook, who discovered it, and I think it was 1792, and named it after his ship, the Columbia Rediva. But you've got the title of the book called The Big River, and that comes from Native American language, doesn't it?
Yeah, so the Columbia River most certainly was not discovered by a European explorer. There's been people living on this river for many, many, many millennia before European Americans showed up here. And actually, there's a number of different languages spoken on this river with many, many dialects between that. And one of the commonalities amongst many of these indigenous languages is that they referred to the main stem of what we know as the Columbia River as just simply the Big River. And so we took the name of our book from that original name for this really big river system that's big in many ways, not just in terms of volumes of water, but it's been a central theme of human cultures that have lived in this region for as long as there's been people living in the Pacific Northwest.
Well, you've done a wonderful job with the photography in this book, and you cover a lot of ground that I hold near and dear that I've been to, and you collaborated with Eileen Delahanty Perks on this. How did this collaboration work where you did the photography and she did the narrative?
Yeah, well, so when I started cooking up the idea of this project to do a documentary photography book about the contemporary Columbia River system, started doing some background reading on it. And one of the books I picked up was Eileen's book, A River Captured. And I just learned a ton from that and loved her voice and loved her perspective. And so myself and the publisher brought her on to write the essay, which accompanies my photography in this book. And it was just a great compliment. The way she, her background and knowledge of the river was really critical in helping shape the overall design of the book.
The river has really changed over the years. It used to be free-flowing, and you had not just, the Lewis and Clark expedition going down and hollowed-out cedar canoes, but you also had steamers, stern-wheel steamers that were going through the rapids in the upper Columbia River, but then it got dammed. And the biggest dam, of course, is Grand Coulee Dam that was built in the 1930s, a project of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. And, of course, Bonneville Dam was also built, too, but there's like 9 dams now, at least 9 dams on the Columbia River, and that's really changed what the river looks like today, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And that's a lot of the previous books that have covered the Columbia River have really either looked at what was lost behind those dams or really looked at the river as something of an industrial project that's, highly managed for flood control and irrigation and power. And those are certainly important stories, but there's so much more to this river than just what was lost or something that's now managed by large dams. The river system itself is still, it's so big and diverse as far as ecological diversity, cultural diversity. The fact that salmon, although they're very beleaguered compared to what they used to be, are still surviving in this river system is really just a testament to both the power of those animals and then also the cultural importance of these creatures to indigenous people and settler colonial culture here as well, that we're working so hard to keep these fish alive. So really the river has changed a lot. It's changed a lot over millennia. The whole river system was really, in some ways, created by giant floods back during the Ice Age that scoured a lot of eastern Washington and carved out the Columbia River Gorge. And so what we're seeing today in a geological context is a river doing what it's supposed to do, which is changing and evolving over time. And just right now, a lot of that change is due to human cultural impacts rather than geological forces. But nevertheless, this river is definitely a system that has been in flux and will continue to be in flux moving forward.
One thing I love about this book is that it highlights not just the river, not just the wildlife that's found in the watershed, but it also highlights the people that are working to protect the river and the watershed, and the photos and stories behind them as well.
Yeah, when I wanted to, work on a snapshot of what the Columbia River looks like today, I knew that was going to include wild places and wild stretches of the river system, and then also places deeply impacted by humans and culture and industry. And I wanted to create a series of images that tied all those things together. And so one of the things I did with a series of portraits of people was I put them in their context on the river. So I wanted to show people with different relationships with the river in their particular context, whether that's somebody managing barges moving through the dams or an indigenous fisher person or, whatever the case may be. I wanted to put them in their context. And in the same way, I've got a whole series of portraits of wildlife in their particular context in relationship to the river. So I wanted to visually show the broad diversity of ecology and culture and all the different ways that different people and creatures are connected to this river, and to really show the diversity that we need to care for as we move forward and think about how to, manage this river system into the next century.
Well, I'll tell you what, you did a great job capturing not just the portraits of the people that are intertwined with this river, but also the wildlife, too. Everything from bison to caribou to harlequin ducks and river dippers and a whole lot more. Folks, they say that coffee table books have gone by the wayside. Well, this one is bringing it all back. Again, it's Big River, Resilience and Renewal in the Columbia Basin. And if you want to get a copy, go to BigRiverColumbia.com. That's the website to go to. This is a brand new book. Again, BigRiverColumbia.com. Order a book today, and it's going to have a great place in your coffee table. You're going to be like me. You're going to be reaching for it and looking at the pictures and reading the narrative over and over again. It's a beautiful portrait of a beautiful river that is just fighting to evolve in a good way here in the Pacific Northwest. David, thanks so much for all you've done in putting together this book and for sharing this with us today on America Outdoors Radio.
It's been my pleasure. Really excited to share more about this amazing river system with people far and wide.
In other news, I've been telling you about the fact that my daughter and I are going to be fishing at Sportsman's Cove Lodge in southeast Alaska on Prince of Wales Island from July 6th through the 9th, and that they're offering a $1,000 discount per person. Well, apparently the word got out and some of our listeners signed up. I just checked with the lodge. They only have one opening left. So if you've been wanting to make a trip to Alaska and go fishing and be treated like royalty and eat great food and have wonderful accommodations and see all sorts of wildlife, well, the place to go is alaskasbestlodge.com. That's alaskasbestlodge.com. Come fish with me and my daughter Faith. We're going to be there with 28 other guests and 30 staff members from July 6th through the 9th, and I would love to see you there. Again, the website to go to alaskasbestlodge.com for Sportsman's Cove Lodge. Speaking of Sportsman's Cove Lodge, if you are into podcasts, check out the Pacific Northwest edition of America Outdoors Radio. It's heard exclusively on CL Sports Radio, KJR 93.3, Saturday mornings between 7 and 8 a.m., and it combines not just the national show that you're hearing today, but also Pacific Northwest content for a total amount of 58 minutes and 50 seconds of airtime. If you live or play in the Pacific Northwest, this is definitely the show for you. And I'm happy to announce once again that this is podcast exclusively on the Cove Sportsman's Network on YouTube. Just look for the Cove Sportsman's Network on YouTube, subscribe, and you can check out this podcast every week. Again, it's the Cove Sportsman's Network, put out by Sportsman's Cove Lodge. You can also hear America Outdoors Radio, not the Pacific Northwest edition, but America Outdoors Radio on our sister show, Northwestern Outdoors Radio, as podcast too. Just look for either one on the platform that you listen to podcasts on. You'll find it in no time at all. On that note, it is time to go, but here's hoping that you are blessed and healthy and that, like me, you're getting to do a little bit of fishing and spending some time outdoors. After all, it is your country and you're outdoors, so get out there and enjoy it.